Well, I graduated last year in May. I graduated with a degree in accounting and international business. Well, yes, I was born here in the United States and I moved to Guatemala when I was 2 years old. Then I moved back here when I was 14. I started my schooling actually in Nebraska in 2011. And I started in 8th grade. And then I stayed in Nebraska for a couple of weeks and then moved here to Carthage and started 8th grade here in Carthage. It was quite different because the schools here are just so big, so many people. And my classrooms over there, at least where I was from, were only like 30, 32 people. And we only had one teacher. Here you had multiple teachers for different, different classes. And you had to move from a classroom to the next. Over there, you stayed in the same classroom.
Oh, so the teacher rotates.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have the same teacher?
Same teacher, except whenever you get to some of the bigger grades. And that's when you have the teachers rotating. But they are coming to your classroom, not you going to them. Barely, nothing, basically nothing. Yes, the only phrases that I could remember knowing at the time were just hello, yes, good morning, no, because that is the same in Spanish. Well, the Nebraska one, honestly, I don't remember much, but that was when I was still with my sister, and so she was going to her classes. We had some classes that were the same, so we got to be in the same classes, like the English class. It was interesting. The teacher that was teaching us English in there was using the visuals and things, giving us, like whenever she was going through some food, she actually took popcorn and gave us all the seasonings to put it in there. And then when I moved to Carthage, I had another different teacher. And the first thing I remember was that I started with one of the translators in school because he was the one walking me around, telling me where my locker was going to be, how to open my locker because I had no clue. And then he took me to the class. The teacher was teaching actually the difference between 2, 2, and 2, which sounds the same to me. I still don't see the difference. It's number 2, 2 with an O, and 2 with 2 O's. So that was the first thing that I remember she teaching in class. Well, when I got there, he actually introduced me to this other girl that was also in the class, and she actually took me around and she started showing me where the rest of my classes were. And since I had forgotten how to open my locker, she went through that again. And she was just telling me about the lunch line and what time was lunch. And basically she was shadowing me around too. And then in some of my classes, I had other students that were knew English and Spanish that will translate for me and help me out with that. Well, tough, because honestly, I didn't need to ask for much help in Guatemala. If anything, all the other students will ask me for help. And I was always, like said, top of my class. Always A student, and it was good for me over there, I say. And then I got here and I felt a little dumb because I couldn't understand the classes. At least numbers, those were easy. Didn't need translation for my numbers. But for the other classes, I actually needed to ask for help and rely on others translating for me. That's another thing that I learned to do more here, and I guess it was helpful because I wasn't used to asking for help whenever I was over there because I already understood it and they didn't have to push me to understand it or learn it or anything. So here I was forced to actually ask for help, to ask what does this mean? How do I do this? And in some of my classes, there were stuff that I already knew, and I was just going over them again. It got boring at times. Then when I got in high school, I'll say math again, because that's one of the easiest for me, classes for me. Well, I ended up being in a pre-algebra class, which was the easiest class ever. I had so much time, and it didn't challenge me at all, but they put me there because I didn't know English. And then I had a lot of other classes like that, were like computer applications. I'm very proficient with computers. And then they put me in classes where it just was so slow from what I would be able to work with. And in other classes, I had too much time. But I guess I used the time to talk to my teacher, so it was good. Well, honestly, I just had to handle it because I didn't have much options in that aspect. And then later on, I guess whenever I got into knowing the teachers more, they kind of noticed that I was smart, and they started being less, I don't know. I mean, they are very helpful with students like that, so they started being less, I guess, pursuing me on that aspect, and they gave me more challenging. Like whenever we had the test, I remember in my history class, they will have two groups. There was the group that didn't know much English, and they will take them to a different classroom to take the test. And there was the other group that was proficient in English, and they will just stayed in the classroom. It still was among the EL students, but it was like advanced students that knew more English. They would stay with with the teacher in the classroom, and then do their exams there instead of having the extra help with the other one. And they started letting me stay in the other class. And then there was actually another teacher that actually signed a form for me, so I was able to take two math classes at the same time because she knew I was capable of doing it. And then also English teacher, Miss Gober, she helped me with that too whenever I needed other classes, just extra. She knew I could do it, and she put me in ones that I was interested in, like say computer web page. I think it does happen because they tend to keep you with the other classmates or in the classes where they know you're going to have help, and they don't want to push you in something that they're not sure if you're going to be able to handle it because you don't have the language. So they just kind of baby you a little bit in classes. And then there's also the fact that they might have more experience with some of the kids that don't have much schooling when they come here, and they forget that there are some of us that actually have more schooling, that were put in school over there and know more, so they still put us in the same level, and that kind of pulls you back because they are trying to teach the other ones and they're teaching you at the same time, but they're teaching you as the pace of the other person. And then you're just being held a little bit back on that aspect. Well, it was very different, and especially when you're talking about you need to file paperwork, FAFSA, financial aid, you get lost in between papers, what you need here, what you need there, what all the requirements are, getting to meet that you have an advisor that is actually going to walk you through your career. And it's very different,
Overwhelming.
yeah, overwhelming, getting to this big building. You have to go. Now it's not just classrooms. Now it's buildings where you have to go to different places, and there are different, what do we say, courses that you're taking, and then a lot of different, more cool people there, and you get separated from that crowd that you're used to. And also, like for me in high school, it was a lot of hanging out around Hispanics. And then I got to college, and that wasn't very much the case. I started all my classes being with a lot of American people or people from different backgrounds of different countries, but not very much Hispanics. And it was all the time English, no Spanish at all. And I mean, when I got here, it was challenging to get the hang of the classes. Needed my books and just knowing what I needed to do, what was expected. And it's more, in here it's not much of an obligation. Is you have to go it. If you want to, you do it. And no one is going to be forcing you to go do your classes. It gets a little tiring, but in the long term it helps a lot because you are exposed to more of the language, you increase your vocabulary, but you need to be like, you're starting to expand your vocabulary so much that there are words that you end up not even knowing in your own language, because there's a lot of vocabulary that I now have that I have no idea what the translation will be to Spanish. I really need to look that up. And there are words that I use that I probably don't know in Spanish, and then I'm stuck because I know them in English and know what it means, but I cannot translate them at the time, so I need to figure that out, or the other way around. And also with that, whenever it got a little more difficult with maybe subjects, there was times that it was easier to find what it meant or what the meaning was in Spanish, so I could really grasp the meaning of whatever I was learning in English. Not always, but sometimes I would just read definitions in Spanish and then just learn from the English. Audible will be English, but if I was reading, sometimes I will just try to find both English and Spanish. So Spanish was like my last one whenever I just couldn't grasp it completely. I feel like it did used to take me quite a bit because I just needed to think and put together what I wanted to say, and I was always worried about my grammar. I needed to double check on that, but I usually ended up working very late at night because it's the time that I just get inspired to do homework. I guess my papers were done at like at midnight. I started it and finished it like at 2, 3 in the morning. I was like, oh, okay, but before the research, it just took me a while to get it, and then trying to figure out how to put it together and just working with the teams. I was actually fortunate because a lot of the teams that I got to work with in my classes were peers that I already knew, and we were moving in the same classes together, so we knew each other, we knew how we worked, and we were able to just work together, talk about our assignments, and be able to smash everything together. I never volunteered to be reading the papers for the drafts. I always looked for someone that was American. I did look a lot of the formatting on the papers because I did like that, and I am pretty proficient with those software, so I'm able to put everything smashed together and make it look pretty. It does get easier. Good question. I usually get stuck too with words, so I don't know. 80s, 70, 80, somewhere in there. Well, it's a little difficult because you always want to share with your family, and like for when I graduated, granted we had COVID and pandemic and we didn't get to do the walking like you was supposed to do. But it was always, I think, like a dream to have your parents and your sisters there. Um, for high school, actually, on my graduation, I wasn't sure that my sister was coming, and she kind of surprised me and just showed up. It was very nice. It was emotional. Yes, because they called my name and I was walking down, and then she just showed up and she was there. It was like a little piece of the rest of my family there. I don't know if there's much that you can do whenever you're missing people, but at least making the student feel welcome and maybe just getting to know them in a little more personal level, if possible. And and that's something that I really liked about my teachers. Most of the ones that I run and I had in the extra time that I was telling you that I had, got to interact with my teachers, talk to them. They got to know me, and I got to know them a little bit. So it does help whenever you look forward to going to school because you have the teachers there that you are comfortable to talk to, and they just make you feel good whenever you're in classes.
Those teachers.
I guess try to see if you can get a type of test so you can measure their level on school-wise to see how you can um, tailor the assignments more to them so you're not holding them back and just them being stuck doing the easy stuff because there is nothing else to do. So maybe try to see if you can give them challenging some homework assignment, something that is going to challenge them a little bit more. I don't remember it all, but I know that the gist of it was going through different classes. Like in science, you feel dumb. History the same, but then you go to math, and since math you don't need translation, it's just numbers. You are brilliant. Basically, it's like the one class where you can shine in a way. I'll say that was a lazy way to get an A, but yes, I did take Spanish.